Hey guys, welcome back to a Seller Session, Thursday, 4 p.m. PST. Paul Rafelson joins me today as we will go in depth. But first, Paul, do you want to say a quick hello? Let us know what you've been up to this week, and then I'll share to the groups.
Well, hello, everyone. This week's been kind of quiet. It's Thanksgiving week. We've had, I think people are focused on getting ready for Q4.
Well, it's Black Friday tomorrow, isn't it? So
yeah, exactly. So, barring the complications that people are having with Amazon, which my partner Jeff has been handling, it's actually been a refreshingly slow kind of week this week, which I really appreciate. Obviously, today is Thanksgiving in the U.S., so I don't expect to hear a lot from people. But no, we've just been busy with the usual stuff. Just still got tax issues, still got IP issues, and I'd say the most interesting thing, this has been the year for me. This has been the year of kind of getting back into what we call sort of M&A, mergers and acquisitions. Although I kind of use the term lightly here because we've just been really busy helping Amazon sellers sell their business. And when I say that, it's not brokering. Like that's not what I do. I'm not a broker. It's just representing the seller, and in some cases the buyers. And so it's fun. It's fun to be a part of that exit. The exit is a big deal. Right?
Well, it's the legacy one, isn't this? Where you get to join the elite. Not everyone gets to reach it, but that's a lot of sellers, entrepreneurs' goals is to land that legacy money and see if they can keep repeating that process.
Exactly. And it's just really exciting. And, this year, it's like leaps and bounds compared to last year, with the rise of not just like, we all know who Thrasio is, but there's a lot of other companies out there who are really interested in sort of, aggregating the brands, aggregating a nice portfolio, getting a nice portfolio of brands to aggregate and sort of grow the brands with their economies of scale. And so we've just seen a lot of institutional money because, COVID kind of has shifted the mindset that e-commerce is, if we didn't know it already, we did, but COVID sort of cemented the future of e-commerce, I think, in the minds of investors. And so, we're seeing, major banks funding some of these massive buying aggregators. And so it really is a seller's market right now. And so we've just been inundated with sellers who just need representation on the agreements and, help representing them and helping them achieve their exits. But it's just so much fun. Compared to, consider my, origin story of sort of moving into this space because of a tax issue where people were kind of in pain and, like thinking they're going to lose everything. It's nice to be on the side of something where it's happy. Actually what I love the most about it.
Well, Lynn, let's get into your story. Let's start with childhood. Did you have any desires to be entrepreneurial, and what age?
Yeah, no, I don't really know if it was entrepreneur. I had an admiration. I always had an admiration for interesting entrepreneurs. Like I remember I was always a big fan of Richard Branson when I was a teenager. So we're talking like the 90s, and when his first book came out, I gobbled that up. It was one of the most interesting books I've ever read at the time, and so I've always had an interest in it, but it wasn't my goal to be an entrepreneur. I always kind of just saw myself in the corporate framework, doing something, which is what I did, and then being a lawyer was, migrating to becoming a lawyer. My initial motivation for being a lawyer was probably more in the mindset of trying to help people, but I kind of found that to be really heartbreaking as I did some of that and switched over to something that was a little bit more.
But I would say, like within inside of our community, you're like an activist, aren't you? You're there to put a shield on Amazon sellers, and you're very. I'm trying to find the right words for it, but a lot of the stuff that you do is you almost play a role of like the David and Goliath, and because of your knowledge of law and stuff, you've been able to protect a lot of people, especially when it comes to sales tax and stuff. And you have a good moral compass, is my observation, and as knowing you as a human being.
Well, I appreciate that. I certainly, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I don't necessarily view it as David and Goliath. I just think but I see how that's obvious. Like that makes sense. I think it's just, to me, it was sort of, utter disbelief, that, these things were happening, like these tax assertions, and then just all the ways that Amazon takes advantage of sellers, and as we saw with the antitrust committee's report, and just sort of surprised that, like, we don't have an industry group. Like, we're an industry. Amazon selling is an industry, and large industries have industry groups, and there's just like so many of us, and there's nobody out there talking to the government or advocating for what this industry is about. And so I took some initiative to do that, and that's sort of what motivates me to stay and be in this field, because I love being an entrepreneur, but I really liked my corporate life. I mean, I'm not, some people talk about, like, I don't want to be in the corporate grind. I never had that negative experience. I miss, there's aspects of being a corporate lawyer I miss, when you're working in a large company as a lawyer, you're not usually working those crazy long billable hours. They pay well, you get your weekends off, you've got a predictable schedule. I pretty much, would go home from work and put my work phone in the drawer and just never look at it until, the next day or Monday, it's the weekend. So, I never had that, like, desire to be on my own. And but this issue was really important to me, this industry. And it is rewarding to help people, like to actually legitimately help people, not just as clients, but just as a group. And it comes with its frustrations too, though. So it's hard, because sometimes it's hard to get people to understand what you're trying to do because they're not familiar with it.
Yeah. Let's go back, because I'd like to track all the way through. Let's go back to your childhood. Sure. Who did you look up to? Was it your parents, or was there anyone particular?
Who did I look up to as a child? I don't really remember. Who did I look up to? I guess I did admire business people, and I did admire entrepreneurs, and I thought, I loved Bill Gates. I was a total computer dork.
Well, you worked at Microsoft, did you? Did you do
I did, and that was like a dream come true for me when I got that. When they said, you're hired and moved to Seattle, I'm like, holy crap! I'm working for the company that I love. Like, I love what they do. I love computers, and I grew up building my own computers, and I could program like DOS code and BASIC and all these useless languages now. I was totally into it, and so it was really cool. And I was kind of a gamer dork as a kid, so everything about going to Microsoft was pretty cool. So, but I did have a tremendous amount of admiration for Bill Gates. I was not, back then, being an Apple fan, like Apple was just kind of this niche computer company. It wasn't anything like what it was today. I don't know, your younger audience may not fully grasp the idea that, there weren't nearly as many Macs out there or
we knew that Microsoft dominated, didn't they?
Oh,
it's like Amazon dominates today, and the antitrust, the Google antitrust and everything else. That was Microsoft the 90s. They just... Yeah, the Apple, obviously, there's Steve Jobs, 87, I think it was, when he got relieved of duties. And then he went off and set up Next Computer, which was obviously even more niche. Then that went under the collapse, if you like. Apple just lost it through the years, releasing loads of products that just didn't connect. But Microsoft went on a big run, didn't they? Through that whole period, they completely dominated the technology industry.
It was massive. I was joking with I teach a law course. I teach a law school class in New York, And this year it's remote, but last year I remember I was looking around the room and I noticed everybody had the little Apple logo on the back of their laptop, and I'm just like, I don't know. I just at the moment, like, when I was your age, like you weren't even allowed to have a Mac in law school. I mean, you could have a Mac, but like none of the like exam software would work. Like nobody supported Mac. It was just like it was like a blip. So you didn't really know the whole Steve Jobs. I didn't really look up to Steve Jobs as sort of like a business icon when I was growing up, because he just wasn't. It was just Apple. It was great. It was a successful company. It was known for graphic artists. It was known, like, Apple had a specific purpose, but like you wanted to be productive in business, if you wanted to game, like everything was Microsoft. It was all Windows based,
and in business as well, because they owned the business as well as home use, home computer and stuff. So you said you were a bit dorky and stuff. How was school? Were you good at sports and stuff? Did you enjoy school? Were you in the right crowd? Or
yeah, I was definitely a dork, although I kind of grew out of. I mean, I think my interesting revelation for me was there was a book called Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. Have you ever read that book?
Yeah, I've read it and love his work. Brilliant.
Yeah, it
complete
was
mastermind. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of sums up my childhood, or at least my view of it in some ways. Was the section, I think the first chapter is about the hockey players, and
what was the age group, wasn't it? Whatever year you joined, if you were born earlier on in the year, you were more likely to pass through and be a pro athlete in terms of a hockey player. If you were 3 months later, you were small because of the development. So therefore they become the outliers. And there was a pattern there. It was incredible.
Yeah. And it is an incredible observation. And it wasn't, and that was hockey, but the sort of the moral is like, it was just anything. Like if you're sort of the youngest in your class, that, you have a higher battle to climb, because you're really like a year behind like a lot of the kids in class, if you're on the extreme side. And that was me. I was born in October of 79, so you can guess my age. I'm 41. And I was on the cusp of what we call like a cutoff, where it's like, do you go to kindergarten or whatever, pre-kindergarten at 4, or do you wait till you're 5, or whatever the age was? And my mom thought that I seemed wicked smart, and I should go at 4, and so everywhere I was always suddenly, I was like the youngest by far compared to my classmates. And I definitely experienced, like, I wasn't a great athlete. I mean, my favorite sports were actually, like, I would do lacrosse, I would do soccer. But my favorite sports were the running sports. And those sports to me were a lot of fun, because I would do, like, if I would play lacrosse in the spring, which I was terrible at, but I wanted to be like prepped and ready, because lacrosse, like our lacrosse practices were intense. We had to run, you had to practice for like 2-3 hours a day, Sunday through Saturday, every day. And then at the end of that practice, you go do like a 3-mile run. I mean, they were brutal. And, I'm like 7th grade, so I'm like 11 years old doing this. It's crazy in your equipment too. And so I started getting into the running sports, like winter track and cross country, just so that I could kind of get, prepped and ready for the lacrosse season, because I really liked playing lacrosse, even though it wasn't very good. And that was always fun to me. So those were always like my favorite sports, like, because I would suck. I mean, I was terrible at winter track. Like I'm next to these people who are like star athletes and, can run, whatever. But it was just, for me, it was just a lot of fun to just like get myself to a place where I could comfortably run 7-8 miles without, and have no problem. And, I'd probably be like, last or third to last or second to last when I'm running in the pack of our cross country team, or our winter track team. But then, come across season, I'm front of the pack in the running pack, and it's like, it was kind of cool. But I mean, sports I was never really good at it. I just like playing sports. I'd, go to summer camp and play tennis for like 8 weeks straight. And it was a lot of fun. Just, overnight camps. And then I went to a small little Quaker school in Southern New Jersey for up until I was in 8th grade. And then kind of got dumped into a public high school. And it was a wake up call. I've been with like the same, 18 kids, for 10 years of school, more or less. And then you kind of get dumped into a public high school where you're like surrounded by, hundreds of kids at one, in your class. It was a different experience. That took some adjustment, but yeah, it was fine. I mean, I didn't really, I wasn't particularly, I think because I was young, I just never really got into like the bad, not that, whatever you call it, the bad crowd, or, I was kind of a good kid. I think as I got a little bit older, maybe I started to be a little bit more rebellious. And, again, another thing about being young in New Jersey, the legal driving age is 17. So all my friends, like I had sophomores who were giving me a ride home from school until my senior year, like people who were like year or two younger than me, sometimes having to drive me home because I was so young that I didn't get my driver's license until I was a senior in high school, which doesn't sound like a big deal, especially if you're in like England or somewhere, or if you're in a city like where you don't really need to drive that often. But when you live in New Jersey, it's like your car is your freedom, and that's how you can't really do anything, and so, but it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed high school. And then, but
where was the next stop after high school? Where did you go? Did you go to university?
I went to, so I got like a partial, scholarship, thing, into the University of Massachusetts accounting program. And I didn't want to be an accountant. Like I wanted to I didn't want to be an accountant. I wanted to be in finance. Like I wanted to be in business. I knew that. Yeah. I didn't know if I wanted to do it for myself, but, and, when I was applying to schools, UMass just like Amherst came to me with this like, great offer, and it's like direct admit into this program. And I'm like, what? And to me, what actually, as a young kid, I wanted out of New Jersey. I just knew that I wanted to go away. And to me, Massachusetts, which is a 4-hour drive from where I lived, it seemed, though, when you're 17, it seems like that's, far away. I just wanted to get out. So I went to college in Massachusetts at the university, and it's in Amherst, Mass, about an hour and a half, hour, 45 minutes west of Boston. And, that was interesting. That was a lot of fun. I think that, I kind of grew up a bit there, and just, really, really kind of came into my own through college, and really enjoyed, being there, and, great classes, great school, and just, really good people. A lot of people I still talk to today. I really got indoctrinated into the Boston culture, which is an interesting culture when you're from New Jersey, because it's, first of all, everybody talks differently. And some of that has stuck with me. Like I still kind of drop my R's because I go to school with people. I went to school with the people who do that. When you go to Boston College or Boston University, you're not really going to college with like the kids from Boston who talk like the Good Will Hunting people. Like a lot of those kids go to the university, they go to the state college. So I was hanging out with those kids, and I just loved it was just a different vibe. I don't know how to explain it. Mass was like a different country to me. The way people were, the love of baseball is famous. I mean, I'm not a Red Sox fan, but I always admired how, like, growing up in a town like Philadelphia, I grew up outside of Philadelphia. Our sports teams just suck, and we don't, really just used to being disappointed, and kind of we're more fair weather. Like we'll pay attention.
I think with Philadelphia's got rich history of boxers, isn't it? You got.
Yeah. I mean, it does, but I mean, we also have a rich history of like not doing well in sport, of choking. Yeah. Where it's kind of a rough. It's a bit of it's an interesting city. Like they don't. Very sensitive city, they don't like people talking about. They get very interesting culture, and I love the city of Philadelphia, and I think it's great. But Massachusetts has a different way of they whether the Red Sox were good or bad, they watched every single sport, every game. It was like a religion. Every game you watched. Whereas like in Philly, it was like, the Phillies suck, we don't watch the game. Like it's just like, or maybe you watch it passively, but you don't really get that into it. They watch every game like it's the World Series. I always thought that was impressive. And I really learned like a lot about baseball more than I didn't realize how much I didn't know about baseball until I started living in Massachusetts. Not that that's meaningful, but I mean, it's just an interesting place.
Yeah. So then, what was the, after uni, you had a good time there. What was the first job that you landed? Bearing in mind you studied accounting, right? So where did the law stuff come in?
Yeah, so I studied accounting, and So I graduated in 2001, and I started working for a company called Merrill Lynch, which is a big financial institution and I worked out of their office in Princeton, about an hour outside of New York, and their main office was right in front of the World Trade Tower. And
Were you there at the time?
I was not there. No, I was not there. Thankfully, my sister was in New York, but she was okay. But you know, I did have I had one of my classmates from school was on one of the planes, which was a little terrifying to me because it was somebody that, you know, wasn't my closest friend, but it was, you know, it was somebody that I would see every day in school, group projects, you know, like I just kind of, and it was really sad because she took a job with an accounting firm called PricewaterhouseCoopers in Boston. And
hold on, I'm going to keep picking up these names off the floor. Huge companies that you just,
Yeah, and you know, this Price Waterhouse is like, you know, the big four. It's one of the big five at the time because there was Arthur Andersen, accounting firms that you know, all the large companies use, and you know, they were like that was pretty much your target. You know, when I was at school, that was pretty much my target for who I wanted to go work for, and you know, the problem is that, like, you know, those opportunities were predominantly Boston for me. You know, because I was being recruited out of a Massachusetts school, and I wanted to move back to Philadelphia. But it was a little strange because I remember, you know, she was on her first audit assignment, having just taken the accounting examination. It was really sad. It was just kind of, I don't know, it resonated with me. It made me want to like plan to get out of the Northeast. Like I really just, that whole 9/11 was really it was really just, I don't know how to explain it. And then
I remember, like, for me, I remember clearly. I mean, I don't watch the news. I don't do politics, watch the news. I don't vote, not interested. But for 3 days, I sat in front of the TV and watched that unfold. It was just like, I was mesmerized in a way, like I just could not, it was the disbelief. And, you know, you flick from channel to channel. I mean, it really resonated with me. And I was in London, you know, and for what it done for people in New York, I mean, in my wife's 40th, we went over, and it was very eerie to go to where the towers were. You know, obviously it's all changed there now.
Yeah, it was really, really strange. You know, my sister lives in a town called Hoboken. Used to live. She doesn't live there anymore. She lives Colorado, but she used to live in a town called Hoboken, right over the Hudson River. And she was on the top floor of a walk up on the Hudson. And you'd go up to the roof deck and just stare off. And I always used to say, like, my whole life, when I would stare at the New York City skyline from New Jersey, my orientation was always to the right because that's where the towers were. And they were just so powerful and, you know, awe-inspiring. Like, they really were amazing. Like, it was just unbelievable to see. And I remember going up back into the city, you know, maybe a month. It wasn't that long after. I mean, because, you know, always had a reason to go to New York for something. And it was just eerie to kind of like see my attention sort of move towards like dead center, the Empire State Building being the sort of the tallest building in the panoramic skyline. It was a very eerie and terrible feeling. And then seeing the rubble obviously was just really sad and just hard to take. And I do think, I mean, when you look at all the problems and issues we have, like I question whether, you know, you think about like something like Pearl Harbor, which I understand is a military attack, but it's like, we didn't, you know, nobody has ever witnessed anything through a television as like shocking and horrible as 9/11. I do wonder if our country sort of has developed, maybe our world, a bit of PTSD from sort of like witnessing this event live on TV. You know what I mean? Like, it just seems like, I don't know. It
didn't seem real, did it?
No. And when I see it now, it's like, it's like, it shows up on, like, you know, when they do the annual remembrance stuff, it's just like, it's hard to imagine. But it's like, I mean, when in the history of our world have we ever kind of witnessed something so horrific like unfold live on TV? Like, I don't know if we give ourselves enough credit, or not credit, but like enough, you know, don't know what the word is, but just like acknowledgement that there's probably some long-term mental trauma that I think we as a nation suffered from sort of witnessing that in the way that we did, and seeing something like that, because we really don't, even when the news is war corresponding, you don't really get the sense that you got on 9/11. And it certainly had an impact on me and made me want to leave. Like I being at Merrill, obviously, one of the things I had to do, I was on like the 9/11 transition team, whatever. And I was, so my day to day would change from sort of like what I had to do, but also trying to figure out how to get all the people who used to work in the buildings in front of the trade towers they're still there. It's the World Financial Center. But they were completely just destroyed on the inside, and get those people into Princeton, and just the whole culture of Merrill Lynch changed, because they were, obviously the economy was tanking and there were layoffs were happening. It's bad when like you're seeing people who don't normally wear suits to work wearing suits to work because they're trying to like look busy and important, like, and make that impression, because and it just got really depressing. So I left Merrill I left in like December. I decided, once I decided to take the sort of the pre-test for law school and made the commitment that I wanted to go to law school, I pretty much told them I'm done, and then took 6 months off to kind of enjoy and prep for starting law school in the following fall of 2002.
Yeah.
So that was, and I remember, like, I actually went to London in December of 2001, and I remember I was going to some like bar in central London, and the guy, I don't know, I think he was giving me a hard time because I wasn't like smart dressed for the bar, because I just like pretty much come off a plane, and my mate said to him, and he said, he's just in from America. Can you let it go? And he just kind of like gave me like a somber look, as if, like, I think you could tell it affected the entire world. It was just.
I was over there in 2001. I had a DJ tour, and I was due to lead on the 22nd, 11 days later, and I went, but I was I was nowhere near New York. I think I did do Boston around that time. Where else was I? Boston, and was North Carolina. I was in North Carolina, and people were asking me about the traveling, and I knew how much impact it has because the level of security that went up, right? Because when I used to DJ, I never even have to show, and I was an international, right? I never had to show passport domestically. You could get round, but everything was locked down. The airports changed forever, and you could see, even hundreds or thousands of miles away, whatever cities I was in, I can't remember all the places. There's about 6 different cities, but not New York. But everyone was scared. You speak to people and they were scared. And then we're talking 11 days later. I see the impact, and seeing all the armed guards and stuff at the airport, and that whole change. The system in the US was very open. Once you've got through immigration, that used to be tough for me, because there was a time I didn't have a visa, because at the beginning of a set of tours, I'd done about 19 tours, but at the very beginning, I didn't get a visa. I went in as a guest, and I took my records with me, and I was a record collector. That's what I put down to get in. But once you got through immigration and you done domestic, it was so easy. You weren't flashing passports or anything. Anyone could walk around. It was just completely wide open. And then you see that change. It was just like, just night and day.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I remember that. I mean, I used to, you go see your friends off the airport, you would walk them to the plane in America, like on a domestic flight, and you go pick them up. If you're picking them up from the airport, I'd go walk into the gate, and and I love airplanes. I mean, I hence why Richard Branson was kind of probably the entrepreneur I looked up to, because I'm obsessed with like, I'm like, what they call it, av geek, so I totally would love going to the airport, and would get, if I ever had to pick somebody up, or, or drop off, I'd always just like, I'll come walking with you. It's okay. I'll come and, just go look at the planes. And it was just, something majestic about seeing the civil plane. I don't really have a thing for the military planes, but just something about a giant 747 landing is just like mesmerizing, or I guess now an A380, it's just like, it's a real accomplishment that this giant piece of metal can just get up in the air. And I mean, I do realize it's basic physics, so don't, I'm not a total moron, but you look at it just sort of objectively, like how magical that is, and borrowing the environmental concerns and all that. But
so once you got to law school, how tough was that getting through doing the bar and stuff?
It wasn't bad. It was just more of I had a bit of a change of course, because I did have, my girlfriend at the time / wife and was an immigrant, and I grew up around a lot of immigrants, people from England, people from South Africa. I just grew up in an environment where I was just around a lot of people from around the world, and I always had an interest in immigration law, and I thought that's kind of where I was going to go. And so I kind of, went through my first year of law school. No major incident there. It was fine. Typical first year law school where you do the basics. And then as soon as, the way it works typically is your first year of law school is pretty much set out for you by the school. Like, you have to take these classes. And then once you get to the second year, you can start taking the classes that interest you. And the first thing I wanted to do was do an immigration clinic. And that's where you're basically practicing law under the supervision of your law professor, and you're defending real people in immigration matters. And I was defending immigrants who were seeking asylum in the United States. And I was really excited about it. And, but over time it was like, you just realize how heartbreaking these cases are. It's a little different than applying for, a business immigration visa or something like that, or, which is still can be heartbreaking, because I've seen stories where it's like, good people who are just trying to, have great jobs, trying to continue to do what they do, or like get some sort of immigration issue, and it's like their whole life gets turned upside down. Like, I've seen that happen. That's tragic, but it just kind of got me thinking differently about the kind of law I wanted to practice at the time. And kind of ironic, because I would end up going back into an area of law where what I was trying to avoid, I eventually fall into. And that was really what I call sort of the emotional practice of law, where like you start to get emotionally attached to the outcome of what you're doing. And I'll explain what that means a little bit more for anyone who's not clear I think it's clear, but now my asylum clinic took up about 4 classes worth out of the 5 classes I typically would take in a semester. So I needed 1 extra class. And so, having an accounting degree, I decided to take a federal tax law course, because I thought, this is going to be easy for me. I have an accounting background. I already know most of this tax stuff anyway. And that was actually the really interesting thing for me, was because when I took that tax law course, I realized, wait, this is totally different than, like, tax law is totally different than, putting a bunch of numbers on a form, like what bookkeepers do and accountants do. Like there's real legal issues, and the legal issues really isn't the tax law. Like, we get what the tax law, it's really like, what are the facts? What are the facts? So you get into, in other words, I sort of quickly learned that in the practice of tax law, what you really are practicing is every other body of law, and then you're converting it to the tax code. You're trying to make the argument for why this transaction falls into this part of the tax code versus that part of the tax code, right? Like, for example, I may, lease equipment to somebody. Is that a lease for tax purposes? It has different distinctions than if it's a loan. Well, if the lease is you pay 99% of what the equipment's worth, and at the end you have the right to buy it for $1, that's a dollar buyout lease. It's actually considered a loan for tax. It just, like, there's those quirky distinctions that really, really kind of like vest in the body of law that's the subject matter, and then you have to kind of convert it. So your job as tax lawyers is to kind of convert it into other bodies' law and convert it into the tax code. And I always just thought that was really fascinating. So I kind of discovered tax law, which I thought I'd kind of put past me when I left Merrill and went to law school, and decided to kind of switch over to that. And the thing about tax law, especially because I was focusing corporate tax, that was kind of where I think I wanted to go, was that it was emotion. There was no, like, you didn't really worry about it. And I can give you an example from skipping ahead. Like, if I was at GE and a couple of years ago, and I think I saved the company, like, I don't know, like $100 or $200 million in a particular legal issue. At the end of the day, they're like, thanks, but that's a rounding error for us, right?
Yeah.
And here's like a $50 gift card to Applebee's, or Fridays for you and your wife, thanks for your service. But like, point being is like, if I had lost that 50 million, or if I had lost that 10 million, like nobody's dying, nobody's hurting. Like, okay, GE doesn't have $10 million. Nobody's gonna lose a night's sleep over that, and that kind of took the pressure off. So I enjoy practicing law in that
environment.
Yeah,
because the personal lives are at stake. Like, what would you say? I know I'm skipping around a bit here because I'm, aware of the time, and I want to get some key points out from you as well. Like, what has been the toughest case you lost?
I don't want to sound like, it may have been one of the immigration cases that I handled in law school because of the fact that, which, I'm sure was appealed and everything worked out. But I mean, they're not all, the problem with the case that I handled in law school, and, I had a team, it wasn't just me, like 5 lawyers and a teacher on it. And it wasn't anything to do with really what we did or performance. It's just that immigration and asylum law is tough. And our clients were from Haiti. And Haiti is a tough country to push immigration cases. And it goes back to the emotions, like, here a woman, her husband came to the US with 2 little kids. And, I'm meeting these people, and I'm traveling out to a detention center in central Pennsylvania to meet with them. And like, they're human beings that I know. And like, you see the kids and you're like, I just want them to be okay. Like, you don't want them to go back to Haiti and potentially face the persecution that they're trying to flee. And it was just it was a messy case because the husband ended up having a bit of a breakdown in the middle of prep and having to go to like a separate facility for mental health, which was basically the prison. And I actually had to go visit him in prison, and, nobody speaks English, and you're doing an interpreter on the phone. It was just it was really emotional. It was a really hard case to handle. Just emotionally, and it just wore on me. And, the judge just, at the end of the day, it wasn't the judge. It's like an immigration judge is not the same as like, you typically find in a court. It's more administrative and, a little less fair. But it was just hard, it was hard not getting a successful outcome for that client. And well, not client, but for that person, because it was just like, it was sad. And, I'm not sure, the problem is the stories sound alike. And so the judges get accustomed to the story of, what does the typical Haitian asylee seeker say? And there was sort of a story at the time about Aristide and Duvalier and my family was associated with being Duvalier, and the Lavalas came after us. And it was like, and so it was sort of a known thing that when you're traveling to the United States, like you do get trained what to say. And so were they telling the truth or were they not? I mean, I don't know, but I just knew that like, it was just, they've been through a lot of trauma. And I really was like, you want them to be okay. And especially when you see like 2 little kids, it's like, it's just, and so that was hard. That like I said, that's an emotional case. I mean, aside from that, I don't really lose cases that often. And the fact of the matter is, most of the cases I handle in corporate world, you typically settle anyway. Like, you don't really, had a few wins, but we typically settle. And
we're talking about settle. I was going to say, let's talk some Amazon stuff, because you've done a lot of stuff. You've made some breakthroughs as well. Like, do you not consider, like, with you're a relatively small law firm, right? Is that
absolutely. We're not. Yeah, we're not.
But then you've got OMG and the stuff that you've gone up against with Amazon and stuff. Like, these are big machines, aren't they? But you've made some breakthroughs. I'd like to talk about some of the highlights of your career from those.
Yeah, no, this has been an interesting thing, because like I said, I mean, the whole thing happened by accident, right? Like, I'm here by accident. Like, I was on a path.
You was an eBay seller, weren't you? At one point.
I was an Amazon, eBay. Yeah. Actually, it was half.com was my favorite. But yeah, I had Amazon sales back when I was in law school, like in '04. I was like paying for school. I was like, it started on a Black Friday. So I guess how many, like 17 years ago today, I guess, or tomorrow, I would have started, I was just looking for ways to make money so that I didn't have to go into debt to pay for law school. And I came across, I was like looking at the Black Friday ads in the newspaper, and I'm like, could I like wake up early and go sell buy a flat screen TV for like $1,000 and flip it for 1,500? And how many times did it? And I'm like, that's insanity. Like, you can't do that. It's too, you can't ship it. You can't, what are you crazy? And I'm like thinking, and then it just clicked, like DVDs. There was this population of DVDs, the series box sets, like Seinfeld, Simpsons, you name it, anything. Yeah. Like Family Guy was eventually like I think the following year, when Family Guy launched their box set for season 1 and 2, and then season 3, it was like, that was insane. I remember that being like, that was nuts. And those things you typically go for like $50, right? And then you would have these like Black Friday specials where they would be like $20. And it was just, the fees were relatively low back then. You ship media mail, so you're only paying like, I don't know, $1.29, $2 to ship. I can't even remember. And so I just, I went for it. I just said, you know what? I'm going to max out my credit cards and buy as much of this crap as I can. And I just started buying every box set under the sun. Yeah. And at these, everybody would be standing in line trying to get the big screen TV or the cheap laptop. And I was just walking around like a kid in a candy store taking all the DVDs. And from there, went on to sourcing other stuff from like Walmart discount, and just kind of learned retail, so I was it didn't have the name. Nobody knew what it was called back then. It wasn't called retail arbitrage. It was just, in fact, most of the time it was called scamming. Like people would tell me, are you scamming these on eBay? Like the store clerk? I'm like, I don't know how reselling is considered scamming, but yeah, I am going to resell them if that's what you want to know. But it was a lot of fun, and it was really, really cool and validating to kind of like start a business like that. But, it wasn't because I wanted to be a business owner. I never thought you could be like, did I ever think I could replace my career as a lawyer as a retail arbitrage person? No, because remember there was no FBA back then. Like I would go to the post office. There would be lines out the door because of me, because I would go to the post office every day with like 100 envelopes, and you couldn't print on your printer. Everything had to be done manually, and then you had to hand it into the post office because you needed the certified scans, or the tracking scan, what they call it. And there was no way to do that on the computer in 2002 or 3 or whatever, 3. And I would cause these lines because like it would literally take like a time to, the post worker could not scan a package in and process the postage in less than like a minute and a half per package. And I had like 100 packages. So like do the math, right? It was pretty bad. So I'd like bring my law books in, and I would start sitting on the floor of the post office, just reading while this line would build up. People hated me in my little Pennsylvania town. But it was fun. I mean, it was amazing. It was really cool.
So let's get into the Amazon side. Let's talk about some of the big highlights for you over the last few years, because you've had some good wins or breakthroughs there, haven't you?
Yeah, we've had some wins. We've had some setbacks, and still fighting some battles. But yeah, so I mean, flash forward years later, I was at GE. GE goes to Boston. There's this big publicity move, like headquarters move, kind of like what Amazon did. GE actually did that first. And I was a part of that, negotiating a move out of Connecticut into Boston, which wasn't really good for me. I didn't want to move to Boston. I like where I was. Everything's great. And then there's all sorts of transition happening at GE, and I decided to bail. And my plan was I would probably have to go work for either a law firm or like a tax consulting firm like Price Waterhouse or one of those companies, or a law firm. And neither one excited me. But I just kind of like, not a lot of companies in Connecticut really need like corporate tax lawyers in my, in the sort of this region. So it's like I could probably gonna have to commute to New York, or I don't know. I just was looking into the opportunities, but I kind of had like a bit of a month or 2 or 3, I don't remember, just kind of like enjoying life and like not worrying about like, what is my next move? And did like a road trip through Europe, saw some stuff I've always wanted to see, and then kind of came back, and we're like summer of 2017, and suddenly I'm asked to do like a blog post because there's all these Amazon sellers getting these tax notices, and there's this tax amnesty, and one of the consultants knew me from back in the day and knew what I did and said, can you write a blog post? And I said, yeah, sure, why not? And I wrote a blog post, and the blog post basically said, stop what you're doing. Everything these state government people are telling you is BS. Everything these tax software companies are telling you is BS. You're not liable for these taxes because, one, under the United States Constitution, they cannot assert this burden on you. And two, even if they could, you're not retail stores for purposes of the tax law, so you're not responsible for these taxes. It's Amazon's store. That was the big thing, because sales tax like that, right? Like you collect at the point of sale, point of purchase, right? And it's really meant to be collected at the store level from the customer, which from our perspective, we really believe Amazon is the store in the tax law. Again, what is tax law? It's taking facts and then fitting it into the tax law, right? So it's like, what is really going on here? And that just kind of snowballed into people calling me up or emailing me saying, can you do a consultation with me? Can you help me get through this tax issue? Can you do this? And then media, somehow I got connected to somebody at CNBC. And I remember the first time I was in a major publication. Like, I'm not a guy who thought I'd ever be in a publication. Like, I'm not supposed to be in CNBC. I'm a pretty, to myself, quiet guy who was like no viral desire or whatever, not viral, no desire to be like a viral or like, I don't want to be known. Like, I was a pretty to myself corporate lawyer guy, content and happy. And now I'm in CNBC articles and Bloomberg articles. And it was just, that was really crazy to me. It was nuts.
Did you get any stalkers from that?
No stalkers.
No stalkers. You got a little bit of mini celebrity status, yeah. So just
a little bit. I mean, exactly. For me, it was crazy because it was like, it's not that big a deal. But now I'm kind of immune to it. Like, I care less. I mean, I know some of these consultants, like, they chase the press, like they're like, they just need to be in every article, and it's more important that they're in the press.
I've seen it. I turn down 99% of media. I don't do any. I've been approached by a lot of people. Normally, they've constructed the story, right?
Yeah.
They want to rent a quote, and they've already built the narrative. So basically, they're asking you to shit on Amazon. So I always turn them down. But I know what you mean is that there's a load of people that go out and just like, it's PR for them. Therefore, they get more work. They get their face out there.
Yeah. Whereas I like talking to the media, but I mean, I just say what I say. And if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it's important for us to be broadcasting our message. So it's like, I have to use the media mouthpiece as much as I can. Unfortunately, I think the media sucks at their job in a lot of cases. Like, I don't think that they cover the issues well. I think that they they do like to shit on Amazon, but I like to shit on, because I feel like sometimes Amazon needs to be shit on more.
Yeah, but there's a difference. There is a difference, right? So you're doing it using facts. You're doing the law. You're doing it's a reason why. What normally happens is people have these hatchet pieces. And like, I'll give an example that I done one and it never got published. I was on a big New York one, 90 minutes. I recorded the whole thing. And they go, well, this is all good. And then they wanted me to start talking about Black Hat and all negative stuff. I said, I'm not interested in talking about that stuff. You can get them. And nothing what I said got published whatsoever. And that was a point in case, because when the article come out, a lot of quotes are in there, but it was just like a hatchet job on Amazon. Now, Amazon do a lot of things wrong, but I'm not there to kick them in the teeth. It's given me a living as well. But I also on the podcast, my thoughts on stuff. Do you know what I mean? We'll hold stuff to account and stuff like that. But I think the point you're getting to is the sake of just going out to get the PR, say whatever you need to say just to get your face out there and use that to grow your popularity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, exactly. I don't.
It's having a bit of decorum, whereas what you're doing is facts. It's legal. You're dealing with issues like sales tax and stuff like that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a message out there. I'm just trying to get, and the message is for the sellers, It's not about me or my personal, I zero desire to be personally famous. Like I fundamentally don't care. And it's actually awkward for me when I see my name in news articles and I get very self-conscious about it. But I always like, am I going to say the right thing? But it's important for me to kind of put that aside and say, this is an opportunity to tell the story about the struggling small business owner. This is the story to say, why should the media care about sales tax? Because it's the number one problem that's preventing people from growing their business right now. It's the number one issue that still prevents women, minority-owned businesses, any foreign-owned, any business owner in the United States from growing right now is sales tax. But it's not a sexy topic. So
well, that's going to say it's not sexy. It's got to be about reviews and Black Cat. That's the shit that they're interested in because that's where they get the eyeballs from. It's all about eyeballs.
And it's like I can't for life, and this has been my struggle. I mean, I've had articles about tax on the sales tax on the media, but it's like I'm trying to explain to people like it's really, it's a really. I give Amazon credit in their genius of using tax as a weapon for their benefit and kind of knowing ahead of time that the subject matter is such a bore at the highest level that most media people won't even pay attention to the fact that they engage in one of the most aggressive and insanely unrealistic tax dodges in history and got away with it. And like every school in America would have a high-end STEM lab if Amazon actually collected sales tax the way they were supposed to. And instead they shifted that blame onto the sellers. Like what a scumbag move on their part, but also ingenious of their ability to sort of, and that is their business model. And it's what we're very critical of is this business model of, we're gonna like use this idea that we're not a store, we're just a marketplace. And each seller is their own store, but then really it's not our store. It really is our store because that's what we tell the Antitrust Committee under oath. But we're going to claim it's not so in other words, when it's to our advantage to say it's not our store, like, if somebody's saying that they got injured from a product they purchased on Amazon, they'll say, oh, well, they didn't buy it from us. You bought it from a third-party seller. Clearly you know that. That window is closing. Or the price gouging situation we had where it's like, I priced this product because Amazon charges a 15% commission and because their little price coach told me that this was actually a market price for the product across the nation. And then Amazon goes and turns them all into their local state attorney generals so that the small sellers become Amazon's scapegoat. But then on the flip side, they tell like the Antitrust Committee, like, hey, it is our store, by the way, which has, for antitrust purposes, benefits them because when they compete against sellers, right? When you compete against sellers, if you're a store, that's not problematic, right? Costco, Walmart, every store competes against their other suppliers, right? They have their store brands, right? Kirkland, Great Value. So Amazon obviously has an incentive to classify themselves as a store for the antitrust purpose and then say, oh, we don't compete against sellers. We're just a store brand. It's like any other store brand. But then for every other reason, and then tax to me was just the most ridiculous. And it's still a problem. It's impossible to start a Shopify business based on if you actually knew what the state governments demanded of you, it would be scary as hell to start a Shopify business. The best way to do it is in ignorance right now.
Yeah. Can I also get you, without naming names, but it's documented and it's public, but the recent indictment thing, I know that you covered it recently.
Yeah.
What's your, without naming people, because I think you need to go through the system first and then decision is made and you're not guilty until charged kind of thing. But an indictment is quite tough, right? What's your opinion on that as it stands from a legal point of view?
Yeah, so I want to clarify something about that indictment issue. We made a comment about it to our members saying that basically, like, if you're certain, if you use any of these consultants, you need to let us know because we need to evaluate your case and make sure you're not in trouble. And we've already seen situations where some of the folks on there have led to suspensions, right? Like we dealt with that. So that's all we were saying. We specifically said in our comments, like, we're not, people are, like you said, these are accusations at this point. We don't know. Yeah. But we did, we do also stress that, sometimes with these suspensions and things like that, like, they're starting to become more legal in nature and maybe should be, I know it's self-serving to me to say it, but it's intellectual property law. Like, if somebody's accusing you of being a counterfeiter, you should talk to a lawyer because that's really scary and has potential consequences, because counterfeiting is against the law. It's not something you go and talk to like a former, I used to work here. That doesn't work. You need a lawyer. It's legal advice. And that was kind of what we said. But to your point, what's my take on it? I mean, I think my take is the same as everyone's. Like I get why it happened, because Amazon sucks and they can be cruel. And that created opportunity, right? Anytime there's an opportunity to cheat, because people are going to try to cheat, and we always did our best to coach our clients and say, like, should you please do not get an annotation from any service provider that does that. Like, we would always, if they ask us, we'd always say, don't do that. That's a bad idea, because we knew where annotations typically come from. Like, it's like, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at the environment. And I think that's what a lot of people are sort of saying, is that sort of the line is like, well, Amazon created the environment, so what do we expect? But
that's projecting. That's not taking accountability. It's you either do it or you don't. And then when you do, you take accountability for your own actions, right?
Yeah, that's what Online Merchant Skills is about. It's like the better way to solve this problem is to work together as an industry group and help Congress start working on laws. And we had a law in California that we helped pass. That's the reason why we have the 72-hour notice, is because of the California law, which is based on the European law, that we helped pass. Because once it became clear that law was going to pass, Amazon started 72-hour notice instead of just surprise. Right. That was an Online Merchant Skills effort. That was AB 1790 in California. Right. Because when California passed law, it's really hard for Amazon to only make it applicable to Californians. So they just, become, California in a way has a powerful way of, as much as I can't stand their tax division, but, as a state, as being a very powerful, influential state, if you can't get it done in Congress, sometimes you can, if you can get New York or you can get California to start to take action, you might end up getting a similar result that you want at the national level. But these problems could be solved by working together. There's so much divisiveness in this consulting community, and it's disgusting. That to me is the hardest part. Nobody, I think the number one reason, people don't I'm not like I said, I'm not a guy who can go influence and get a bunch of people to go do stuff for me. Like some of these other group leaders who have 100,000 followers. And it's but I go to them and I say, here's this thing called the Online Merchants Guild. Here's what we're trying to do. Can you help me spread the word? And it's always what's in it for me? Or, how do I, it's what do I get? Do I get a referral fee? I'm like, no, you don't. You're trying to make the world better.
Yeah.
I always ask people, talk to your influencer. If your influencer isn't supporting something like an Online Merchant Guild, whether they're doing it on their own or I just think we should all be working together more. And through that.
Well, this is why you've got a platform here. I've always supported with what you do with that.
You're you and a handful of others are just absolutely amazing. It's, I guess it's it takes one to know one. You said a lot of nice things about me, because it's true. I could leave at any moment and go work in a big corporate job, probably get paid more, have a much easier life. I do this out of passion. This is a passion project for me.
Well, it has meaning, doesn't it? It gives you a reason to get up in the morning.
It does.
I'm going to embarrass you a little bit and read out some of the comments. So Brian says, hello, Paul. Hope you are doing well. He's followed up with, thanks for all you do, Paul. Really appreciate and thankful to have you here in the Amazon space. Laurie says, Paul Rafelson is brilliant and the greatest lawyer. He really, truly cares about his clients. How do I know this? Because I've worked with him. He's just the best.
Thanks, Laurie.
Melissa says, Paul, what a great guest to interview. So knowledgeable and supportive of the e-commerce community. Thanks, Melissa, for that.
I'm sorry. Little balls.
We're getting close to wrapping up here, but what would you say is the darkest hour before dawn for you in your life?
The darkest hour before dawn? I don't know. I don't know. I think this California tax and these sales tax issues actually really bother me, because it's just I think we'll get there. I know it's legally, we're on the right side of it. We've even filed a lawsuit in California, but lawsuits never move fast. I just filed another one in September, right? It's going to move quick. And I say quick, maybe we'll have a first answer by April. Maybe we'll have appeals. I needed it. I want it done now. And the dark is, I guess, is just it's that inability to get everybody together, get people motivated to take action. Because I do think at the end of the day, as much as I'm trying to fight this battle in court, it is a PR move. Like if there was sort of a social media viral response to what was happening in the tax world, or if people understood it, how bad it is for these businesses that a bunch of out of touch old white men in state tax administrator jobs are basically the #1 barrier to success in e-commerce and are actually threatening people. Small business people in their kitchens are getting threats from Wisconsin who've never been. And it's just insanity that we live in this, it's like tyranny. It's like we live in an age of tyranny. We're a country that was founded on tax tyranny being a problem, right? No offense, Dan. I know you weren't there. You didn't do that. This was a long time ago. It's like 300, right? You didn't, so I apologize. You did not.
You ain't got to apologize to me.
Yeah. Sorry for throwing the tea in the water too. I hope that doesn't affect you. That wasn't me either. I wasn't there. But my point is, we're a tax tyranny country. And it's like there's a massive tyranny going on, and they're getting away with it because it's not a sexy topic. And to me, that's been the most frustrating part. Is I just don't have the ability to communicate to the right people, to get the right PR, the right viral message to say, this is what's really happening. If you look under the surface of the fact that this is a tax issue, it's actually a self-reliant small business issue, right? I mean, these e-commerce has been an amazing platform for people to find opportunity in areas. If you're in Western Kentucky, where if you're not in the coal business, you're probably not making much more than minimum wage. Think about how e-commerce has changed that. Now you can actually make as good a living in Western Kentucky as you can in New York, and you don't have to live in New York. You can live in, it's such a beautiful opportunity, and it's under such a huge threat, and nobody gets it because nobody's a nerdy tax lawyer who deals with this every day. And I really want to get through this. I need it to be out of my life. I think I'll be happier when tax is finally acknowledged and resolved by Congress, by whomever, or at least, to the point where's the outrage, there should be. So that I can focus on, what we said at the very beginning, the fun stuff. I love working on exits. I love working on transactions that are about growing your business. Those are my favorite kind of cases. When people come to me, I'm on exit, or I'm expanding my business into this and I need some, transactional work. I love that stuff. That makes me happy. When I get to help people grow, I'm in a much better mood and a much better spirits. And then when I get, that I'll have a day like that. And then, there was a woman in Oklahoma who's she served in the United States Army. She sells a very small amount on Amazon, and she's getting threatening letters from the governments of California. She lives in Oklahoma. I mean, it's just they just such a buzzkill, because then I have to talk to, and it's hard to hear because people really are scared and nobody knows. And so I guess that's, to me, is when we get through this tax and I can put tax behind me and just it's over, I think that's, to me, the happy day.
Yeah.
So
how would you like to be remembered?
Being a nice guy, funny. I don't know. Not a dick.
Well, you definitely tick all those boxes.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, look, you're a great guy. That was your in-depth. I hope you enjoyed that. Yeah. It
was great. No, thank you. I appreciate it. It was, the questions were interesting. I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't expecting a trip through childhood, so it was a little sporadic. I wasn't expecting to go that in depth, but I guess I should have known, because as promised, it was in depth.
Yeah. Cool. What's the best way that people can reach you?
So, Paul at ecomattorneys.com or sellerbasics.com. Paul, those are our two platforms. And then if you have questions about advocacy, or you want to help out, or know an influencer, or happen to have a friend who's an influencer, want to talk more about our advocacy, Paul at onlinemerchantskill.org. So very easy to email me. I respond to my emails, and I love talking to people. So definitely reach out if you have any questions.
Great, guys. Thanks for joining us today. It's the last show of the week for me. Have an amazing Black Friday tomorrow. I hope you go out there and smash it and all do well. So also don't forget to tune in Monday. Bella will be back. I'll be back here Tuesday to Thursday. Make sure you take care of yourself, your health, and your family. Much love, and I'll see you back here next week.
Thank you, Danny. Thanks, everyone.